Right about 20 minutes now past the hour, President Trump sounding optimistic about talks with Iran, saying that negotiators have made progress on at least one major point.
It all starts with they cannot have a nuclear weapon. Just, I said yesterday, they said, what are the top 10? I said, well, number 1, 2, and 3 is they can't have a nuclear weapon. And they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And we're talking about that. And I don't want to say in advance, but they've agreed they will never have a nuclear weapon. They've agreed to that.
That from Tuesday. Now on Wednesday morning, Peter Doocy picks it up. North Lawn, White House. Peter, nice to see you. Good morning.
Bill, good morning. And that is a big step closer to the end of Epic Fury if Epic Fury was started to stop Iran from getting a nuke. Now officials here are floating a 15-point peace plan to end the war once and for all.
It was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not going to tell you what that present is, but it was a very significant prize. It wasn't nuclear related. It was oil and gas related. And it was a very nice thing they did. But what it showed me is that we're dealing with the right people.
Part of the problem is that part of the group that created all these problems in Iran, Iran's Revolutionary Guard, has a spokesman saying about these negotiations, have your internal conflicts reached the point where you are negotiating with yourselves? Our first and last word has been the same from day one, and it will stay that way. Someone like us will never come to terms with someone like you. But President Trump is suggesting that the old guard is out of the mix.
We killed all their leadership. And then they met to choose new leaders, and we killed all of them. And now we have a new group, and we can easily do that, but let's see how they turn out. We have really regime change. This is a change in the regime because the leaders are all very different than the ones that we started off with that created all those problems.
President Trump is still really frustrated by a lack of help with the war effort from NATO allies, but he says with this war, America's allies in the Gulf have been pretty good. Bill?
All right, Peter, thank you. Peter Doocy kicking off a day there at the White House. Dana.
Let's bring in Brian Hook. He's a former U.S. Special Representative for Iran, so you know this well. Want to pull up here, apparently these are the U.S. and Iranian demands as we understand them right now. Among other things, the United States, in addition to the no nuclear facilities, zero nuclear enrichment, missile constraints, guaranteed free and safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, and an end to Iran's proxy support in the region. There are several things that Iran is demanding, like compensation for the war and a new payment system for the Strait of Hormuz. But also, you just heard Peter Doocy say that at least state media is telling the world that Iran is not having any of these discussions. Based on your experience, where do you think it actually stands?
Well, Dana, where I think it stands, we're at a fascinating moment that has eluded so many American presidents. And President Trump seems to have Iran where every president has wanted to have Iran, which is under pressure and coming to us for a deal. And historically, if you look at either President Obama or President Biden, it was the reverse. We were under pressure because of Iranian nuclear blackmail, and then we would give into the pressure, and then we would chase Iran all over Europe trying to get some sort of deal, which ended up being the Iran nuclear deal, which President Trump was right to leave. Now we have this dynamic where the Iranian regime is certainly feeling the heat, and they're looking for some sort of off-ramp. And so this is a really important moment. It's a sign of possible progress.
I'm going to put up on the board for everyone to see the leaders who have been killed, but there's also some that the president might be able to work with and talk to. I don't know if you know this parliament speaker, Galiba, if I'm saying that correctly. Do you think the United States or anyone of our allies in the Gulf who want us to keep making sure that we get at least the demands that President Trump is asking for in regards to nuclear weapons, can that guy be dealt with, the parliament speaker?
I think this is an encouraging sign that the speaker is now coming forward. It seems to be that he's the person potentially on the other side of the table. And this is a good development because when you're dealing with the Iranian regime, it's not a normal country. And if you're sitting across from the foreign minister, that's often theater and smokescreen. But this speaker of the Iranian parliament is a former IRGC leader, and he's real. He's an important guy in the system. And so when I think about this, you had Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner doing talks with the Iranians in Oman and in Geneva. I think those talks were productive. But ultimately, Iran could not get out of its own way, and they over-negotiated with them, and they didn't take our demands seriously. But now I think we're at a moment after now almost a month of war where we may have the right people potentially at the table, and they're looking at this list, and Dana, you showed it on screen earlier. That's the right set of demands around the nuclear weapons, the missiles, and the proxies. Those have to be resolved once and for all.
Brian, new sound from former Secretary Tony Blinken has just come in. I understand this is from Harvard last night. I have not heard it yet. Apparently expressing some regret about actions that they did or did not take. Let's listen to it together and get your reaction on the other side. Here's the former Secretary of State under President Biden.
You kept referring to an agreement that was longer and stronger.
That's right.
And you never got there.
Yep.
Given what's going on in the world, is that a regret?
Yeah, it is. I wish we had gotten there. We worked very hard on getting that longer and stronger agreement. And I think at various points, we were really leaning into it. The Iranians were leaning back. At other points, they were leaning in. And we had our own constraints. I'll acknowledge, too, that sometimes politics gets in the way. You have midterm elections. It shouldn't be, but it is too often a factor.
Now, Brian, you and I and our audience are hearing those comments from Secretary Blinken for the first time. Do you have an immediate reaction to that?
Well, the problem with that whole line of diplomacy that he pursued is he had no leverage. And the Iranian regime did not fear President Biden. They just simply didn't take him seriously. And so his negotiators didn't really have much power. It's just the reverse now. President Trump's negotiators have leverage and they have power. And there is, the negotiating table is not balanced. It's imbalanced in favor of the United States. And that was something that completely eluded the Biden administration. And they were always chasing the Iranians for a deal. They were trying so desperately to get back into the Iran nuclear deal. And so now I think the United States is in a much better position, and the president has used pressure and diplomacy very well.
Brian Hook joining us from Miami today. Thank you so much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.